Coming up on Tech News Today, should you fear the new Skype vulnerability? Facebook stock bounces back. We'll tell you why. And is AMD for sale or not? Should they be? All that and more coming up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Wednesday, November 14th, 2012. Tech News Today is brought to you by MailRoute, email filtering in the cloud for companies and resellers of any size. MailRoute offers live support and one-click sign-up for free Postini migration and 10% off the life of your account. Visit mailroute.net, click the sign-up button, and enter the promo code TNT. And by the new Squarespace. Squarespace introduces a new content management system, making it faster and easier to create a high-quality website, blog, or online portfolio. Plus more than 50 new features, including mobile responsive designs. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase, go to squarespace.com and use offer code TNT11. And by Ford, featuring Available Sync. Now you can control your media player with simple voice commands. Enjoy your drive while you easily search and listen to your favorite songs. Check it out on the 2012 Ford Focus and at Ford.com/technology. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Iyaz Akhtar.
And I'm Jason Howell.
And this is the show where we keep you up to date on the most important stories in the tech world. Put them into context for you, starting with the top 10 stories of the day in the news fuse. The Next Web reported on a security hole in Skype that's been discussed on some Russian forums for the past 2 months. The vulnerability allows anyone who knows the email address associated with a Skype account to reset the password and take over the account. The Next Web alerted Skype to the issue several hours before publishing the story, and Skype has suspended password resets while they investigate.
Google TV is getting another update. The platform is rolling out voice navigation and an updated content discovery interface. When we first did Google TV, it felt more like a computer, says Google TV product manager Rishi Chandrara, telling Wired. It shouldn't have, though. The magic doesn't come from a complex UI. It comes from the user trying to do something and it happening really quickly. We're trying to make it as simple and easy as possible to access content.
Yay, more magic. Hey, did you think that the widespread patent piece would start with HTC Apple with that settlement? Well, don't you worry. A Samsung executive said that the company had no intention on following HTC's lead, meaning no peace with Apple. Meanwhile, Samsung has publicly denied raising prices on its processors made for Apple, telling a Korean newspaper that the prices were agreed upon at the beginning of each year, and those aren't changed easily. The lawyer in me says that statement means the hike is for next year.
Yeah, but that lawyer's retired. He's like on a beach somewhere just sipping a Mai Tai, right?
That's what he does.
Okay. But he's still right. Gartner's numbers for worldwide mobile device sales confirm Samsung and Android as the world leaders. Samsung had 22.9% of the phone market in the third quarter, followed by a falling Nokia share of 19.2% and a new number 3 in Apple at 5.5%. Remember, this is worldwide phones, not just smartphones. 72.4% of phones sold run Android, followed by 13.9% running iOS, and RIM rising to third, although their market share fell to 5.3%. They were buoyed up by Symbion's plummet from second to fifth.
Ouch. RIM's busy with the upcoming launch of BlackBerry 10 and those BlackBerry 10 smartphones that are scheduled to hit retail shelves not too long after the planned January 30th launch event, but not too busy to also roll out BBM 7. Yeah, the new open beta of BlackBerry Messenger includes free Wi-Fi calling between BBM users. The solution obviously can help users save on voice minutes as long as they have Wi-Fi available. Just don't expect the feature to work on cellular networks anytime soon. RIM says there are no plans currently for that capability.
The fiber, it's alive. Google Fiber went live in Kansas City on Tuesday. Now, the service offers 1 gigabit per second for $70 a month. Real-life tests show speeds consistently at 600 to 700 megabits per second on a wired network. One Google Fiber user complained that he'd get spoiled with Google's network and other networks would seem too slow. Well, boo-hoo for you, Gigabit Boy.
Yeah, what a humble brag.
Gigabit Boy.
That's what I'm calling him.
Okay.
A $250 million class action lawsuit has been filed against U.S. pizza chain Papa John's for allegedly sending illegal text messages. The plaintiffs allege Papa John's sent a total of 500,000 unwanted messages in early 2010. Some customers complained they received more than 15 texts in a row, sometimes right in the middle of the night, according to Donald Hayrich, an attorney representing the class. No more pizza spam.
Microsoft's Andy Lees, who was moved out of running the Windows Phone division less than a year ago, is now head of corporate development and strategy at Microsoft. Congratulations. Lees has been working on a time-critical opportunity focused on driving maximum impact in 2012 with Windows Phone and Windows 8 for the past 11 months. Sounds pretty important. Now he'll be reporting directly to Microsoft CFO Peter Klein rather than Steve Ballmer.
Come in from the cold, Andy. Stephen Sinofsky is gone.
Right. You're okay after all.
Reuters reported yesterday that chipmaker AMD hired JP Morgan and Chase to explore a potential sale. AMD issued a press release denying the report, saying they believe in the strategy the company is pursuing. Statement said, quote, AMD is not actively pursuing a sale of the company or significant assets at this time. Actively? Well, maybe they're pursuing it lazily.
That's the lawyer in you there. There's a big opportunity in Maps and iOS, and Nokia wants to take advantage of it. Nokia will release a Maps app, and it's called Here. The app will be free and will offer offline support. That's not all. Nokia is also working to bring its Maps to Android and is forming a partnership with Mozilla for its Firefox OS.
This episode of Tech News Today brought to you by MailRoute. Do you want maximum no spam in your company? Are you migrating from Postini and looking for another email filtering service? Then check out MailRoute. MailRoute offers live support and easy one-click sign-up. Migrate from Postini to MailRoute today and receive email protection services free of charge for the remainder of your Postini contract. And MailRoute will even match your current Postini pricing. It's a no-brainer to switch from Postini to MailRoute for free. I've been using MailRoute. It revived one of my old Brilliant.com addresses that I thought was dead. But all I did was change a couple things in my DNS MX records. The clean email started to flow. All the bad email gets taken away. I think 99.7% of the mail to that address was spam, and MailRoute got rid of it all. Their new administrative interface gives you direct control over every aspect of the service, from setting the sensitivity of the filters to adding domains or users. And they're cool with the little guy, even if you're not a big company. They'll take you on. They'll help you out. So try it for free. Visit mailroute.net. Click the sign up button and enter the promo code TNT to start your 15-day free trial and get 10% off the life of your account. No credit card required for the free trial either. That's mailroute.net. Click the sign up button and enter the promo code TNT. We thank them for their support of Tech News Today. All right, let's bring in Stephen Shankland, senior writer at CNET News and denizen of the United Kingdom. Thanks for joining us, Steve. It's great that you can join us now that we're in the mornings.
All right. Yeah, it's good to be glad you shifted the time around so I could do this.
Let's start off talking about Google TV. We were just chatting about it before the show started. They've rolled out, or they've announced, I guess, they're going to be rolling out some new features to Google TV. Those with second-generation Google TVs will get these in the coming months. Folks with an LG TV with Google TV built in should get them first. Those like me, who have a Logitech Review, are only going to get a couple of the features, not going to get the voice.
We get YouTube sharing.
Yeah, we get the YouTube sharing and the new guide.
It's an update, just not a full update. So
the one that's getting all the attention, though, is the one first gen doesn't get. Voice search with natural language that uses Google Knowledge Graph. Now, the idea, of course, is that you could say, find Homeland, and it would tell you all the places you could watch Homeland, whether it was on Netflix or on your live TV subscription from cable or whatever. But it also does natural language. So if you say, movies with Christopher Nolan and Christian Bale, it should show you The Dark Knight and, what was that, Prestige is the other one that those two have worked together on. It would know, like, oh, you want to know the movies that those two are credited in, or even say Pixar movies, and it knows that it's movies that are made by Pixar, and it shows you all the places that you can find them, no matter what the source, right? That's the brilliance of this. But Stephen, you were mentioning before, there are some weaknesses to Google's voice recognition search.
Yeah, I use it a lot on my phone, and I have to say that I think that proper nouns, names, places, titles are one of the areas where it's weakest. And, maybe they have a special weighting algorithm where they expect stuff that's in the context of TV or movies, video. And so maybe it does a better job. But I actually find that's one place
Yeah, where it tends to fall down.
I think the knowledge graph, though, that's smart because, people kind of like to look at adjacent stuff. Maybe you like this, maybe you like that. That's, closely related in some way. So I think that's a solid idea. But again, that we've seen this movie before. This has been going on for almost 2 decades now. People trying to make TV interactive, connected to the internet in some way. And time again, people have just shown a preference for a much more passive, sit back couch experience. So, we'll see if this, people really want to dig around in the details of the metadata of the videos, or if they just want to queue up what they want to see and let it go.
Well, that would be the brilliance of it, right? If I could just say, I want to watch Star Trek The Next Generation, and it would pop up all the stuff. If it works like that, then I think that's handy. But I don't think anybody trusts voice recognition after Siri, after Xbox Live, never working exactly right. You have to kind of figure out what the quirks are to get to use it. And once you do that, they actually work fairly well. But are people going to want to train themselves on the quirks of a new system? Will it actually deliver on the promise of I can just say what's on my mind and it'll work?
So
go
ahead, Stephen.
Here's where things, here's what you have to look at. About 10 years ago, internet search was coming on, and we'd all do these, funny, primitive, kind of awkward searches like pizza San Francisco, as opposed to how we would actually think about asking our friends, hey, where's a good pizza place in San Francisco? So search started off as this really primitive thing because, it wasn't very good at discerning what our intent was when we were searching for something. And I think that voice-driven search, it's at the same stage right now. It's very primitive. There's a lot of work to do. I think 5 years from now, it'll look a lot better, a lot more sophisticated. Right now, Apple and Google and Microsoft are, they're working on this pretty hard, and they're getting a lot of new data from people using it, which I think is, an immense help. So I would be disinclined to write it off as useless at this stage. It's going to get better.
I think Stephen probably hit on a probable likelihood when it comes to the voice search on this. Probably will be limited to just a couple of things, as opposed to doing it on an Android device where it's searching the web and your device and every single thing for what you could possibly mean by pizza San Francisco. It could be a style of pizza, it could be anything, or the location you want. But I think with the voice search on Google TV, in theory, since it would, I'm guessing, that it was going to only search those limited number of resources, you're going to get results that are a little bit better. And that weird line where you don't get it on the first generation Google TVs, I believe Google claims that the difference is the architecture. First generation was Intel, new generation is ARM. So I guess they didn't bother to program it for the old one. So if you went in early for Google TV with the review, which I avoided like the plague, and I'm really happy I didn't get it, it just seems like, well, congratulations, early adopter, you get limited functionality.
Less.
But that's always the way. I mean, older machines don't always run everything, and they're always not going to cross-compile until we get a universal world where everything runs on everything, which may or may not ever happen. But the older machines will get the new guide as well as the newer folks. Sarah, what do you think of prime time, dynamically learning your favorite shows and channels and showing you on-demand options for things like currently playing programs? If you go to, let's say, HBO and they're in the middle of The Wrestler, was the example given in the story I read, they'll say, oh, well, you're in the middle of this, so here's a place where you can go watch it, maybe Netflix, from the start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think that's fine.
Doesn't fire anybody out.
No, it's sort of like, that could come in handy every so often. It's certainly not something where I'm like, oh my gosh, how many times does that happen to me? Several times a week, I got to get myself a next-gen Google TV, or my next TV's got to have Google TV integrated because of this sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's a perk. If you've got it, you probably appreciate it, but I don't think it's a reason to get a new system.
I'm probably more excited about the idea of it accurately learning my preferences so I don't have to drill down so far. But again, that's not the thing that makes me like, oh, I'm dying to get this now.
Well, and there's just, I don't know, I think I have fatigue on services that say, here, hook up your Netflix account and we'll start to get smarter about what you might want to watch next. A lot of times I'm like, yeah, you're right, and I've seen all those movies.
The other thing is Google TV, the promise of it was to have all this, the access to a ton of categories like Hulu, Netflix, Amazon, and then they got shut out. Google TV got shut out. So it doesn't matter if...
Well, they didn't get shut out of Hulu, Netflix, and Amazon, though.
Well,
they got shut out of NBC.com.
They got shut out of certain... It wasn't as easy, or it didn't live up to the promise of what it was supposed to be. This one device that could access all this web video, and if you wanted to...
I honestly do think that that's overblown, though, because what happened was was that Google had a Chrome browser that could access stuff that none of the other set-top boxes could, and they blocked the Chrome browser. But they still have access to most of the other stuff that any other set-top box.
So I'm saying for the primetime aspect. So if you had this guide feature and you had the ability to just say, oh, do I go to Netflix? I don't have a Netflix subscription. That's $8 a month. Or can I watch it free on Hulu? Can I do it a different way? It's just if Google can convince the companies again to go, look, have your apps written for Google TV. We're going to let you do this. And then we'll have access and we can scour your information that way. It'd be a little bit...
That's what they're doing.
It's what it's supposed to do, right? How long is that going to stay that way?
Well, the apps are written and they're running on it. I mean, Google TV is competitive as far as the access to the different services compared to, say, a Roku or a Netgear or something like that.
I just... I mean,
so here's the deal. Here's a complaint I've had. Getting back to the recommendation engine thing, every day I get something from Amazon or from Apple or from Google saying, "Hey, you might like this music. You might like this video. You might like this camera widget," and I have to say I'm really unimpressed with how good the suggestions are. You know, I think maybe 2 or 3 times in my life I've actually parted with my money to buy whatever they recommended, and you know, I'm a little worried that this is going to be more of the same. You would think that Google, of all companies, with its massive data crunching ability, would be able to actually figure out what to recommend to me. But again, I think like as with the voice recognition, if you narrow the scope down to a limited domain, it might be more effective. Where all we're looking at is just TV shows, then maybe the predictions will get better. It's like, okay, well, if you watch Breaking Bad every time it comes on, well, then there's pretty good likelihood you're going to want to watch the next episode. So I think it could be better, but so far I'm with you guys. I'm just skeptical that the recommendations are going to be anything I'm interested in checking out.
Go back to what Iyaz is saying too. I think probably one of the places they'll fall down, I would expect, is recommending YouTube stuff. Because they've got live TV built in and indexed, which is a big advantage. They've got Netflix, they've got Amazon videos in a way, although they don't have the app. Iyaz is right about that, and they have your Google Play store where they can recommend stuff. But will they say, oh, there's a new show H+, the digital series on YouTube that you might be interested in based on your taste? Will that stuff plug in there? I kind of don't expect that to happen. I could be wrong. Let's move on to Nokia Maps coming to the iPhone. Am I reading this right?
Yeah, iPhone and Android phones.
Wow.
Nokia is going to release a Maps app called Here, obviously based on the name of their maps already, in the App Store for free, in Apple's App Store. It will also release a toolkit for programmers to make Nokia-powered mapping apps for Android phones. Nokia is also partnering with Mozilla to develop location features for Mozilla's new OS, Firefox OS is what it's going to be called. So Nokia is like, our maps are good, we want to be everywhere. And you might think, well, they've got the Lumia phones, and Nokia made a big push about how Nokia maps were very good and set Lumia phones apart. Well, Lumia phones haven't sold that well. CEO Stephan says, yeah, listen, the Lumia phones are still special because they'll have certain features. For example, City Lens is something that Lumia phones have, where users can point the camera at actual objects and you see data overlaid on top of them. That's not something that's going to be in the apps for the other operating systems. But the point is that Nokia Maps is a good product. In many cases, people will consider it a better product. So we might as well be everywhere. So it's kind of, they're also acquiring Earthmine, by the way, which is a mapping company. It's based in Berkeley, California. Makes 3D dimensional maps. Neither company is saying how much Earthmine was bought for by Nokia, but both parties expect the deal to close by the end of the year. So, I mean, they're taking this really seriously. Now, of course, on the iOS side, it's a race to beat Google, right? Nokia has a really interesting opportunity here because if you are If Apple Maps are lackluster, you want a different option. Nokia Maps are amazing, and you don't have Google Maps unless you're using the browser, which again works, but some people just don't really like that experience. Nokia is positioned to really gain a huge market share here. On the Google side, I think it's a lot tougher. Sure, you can have programmers going nuts designing Nokia-powered mapping apps for Android phones, but I don't think there are a lot of people using Android phones right now saying Google Maps just is terrible. What a terrible
Yeah.
experience this is.
It's an easier path because you can get people to change their default maps, which you can't in iOS.
Right.
But they're all happy. They're not looking for a change?
Yeah,
like
I
they
just
are.
don't hear a lot of people complaining that Google Maps is the only option, but it kind of sucks on Android or anything like that. What do you guys think? Is this window that we're looking at on the iOS side?
I think we got a window and it's going to close, but obviously Apple is the one working to close it as fast as it can, and then there are other contenders trying to get a piece of the mapping action. I think one thing about the cross-platform angle is if you're a programmer, it might make life simpler if you can just work with one back end.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to go cross-platform, Windows and Windows Phone and iOS and Android, that might be handy for some programmers to be able to deal with that, especially if it comes up to API licensing sorts of issues. But I think it's a smart play by Nokia. I remember back in the old days when Microsoft was wrestling with its antitrust case, and there was all this question: should it bring Office to Linux? And of course, it never did. But I think there's a certain healthiness that comes to a business when it's forced to compete on other platforms and not just be the incumbent player that comes along for free with a particular operating system. So, I think this should be pretty healthy for Nokia.
My thought on this is Nokia does seem to have some momentum with maps, and if they can get even a little bit of uptake on other platforms, is this an exit strategy for Nokia or a way forward, better than an exit strategy, where they do what a lot of people have been saying RIM should do. They start to make cross-platform services available while still making their own phones. They used to be a rubber boot company. They can continue to adapt and move forward. Maybe Nokia becomes better known in the future as a great mapping company.
I mean, that was what I think Elop said, that we're going to be the Wear company. That's what we want to be known as. For them to have their maps on every platform, I think they have a good chance with Android, actually, because they're introducing that toolkit that other users or developers can put things on top of. Nokia has that City Lens on their Lumia phones. If you could offer an experience that's different on an Android phone, a phone that is, it could get people away from there, because people with Android phones like to tinker. You're like, okay, well, I can change the default. I can try a different lens on top of something. Maybe I want to have a different augmented reality feel as opposed to the same old Google Maps app that's been there for a very long time. While it's great, just the option to change it and then bring it back when you want to, you might not switch it back. Versus iOS, it seems like Nokia needs to do that because there is this big window of, God, this is awful. I mean, the maps on Apple right now, on iOS, is miserable. So for Nokia to step in and go, oh, by the way, you should take a look at our app. And maybe there'll be a little ad or something for a Lumia phone. Maybe it'll be a little gateway drug of, hey, we actually have other stuff that's really cool. Check it out.
I gotta disagree with you on one point. I don't think the tinkering thing, I don't think it's big. I think you can on Android. I think it's great. But, for example, if you look at the browsers, you can use Firefox, you can use Dolphin, you can use Opera, you can use any number of other browsers on Android. And 99.99% of the people just use the browser that came with the phone. I think the same thing will happen with maps. Maybe not quite to the same degree, possibly. If Nokia can convince people that there's something really neat or awesome or interesting about their maps, and people recognize them as a mapping company to a certain degree, but I just don't think the tinker factor is really going to work beyond just a very small fraction of Android users.
All right, let's move on to Microsoft. We talked in the news views a bit about Andy Leese, the Microsoft employee who came in from the cold.
Yeah, he was like sitting outside. And they're like, hey, we happen to have Andy Leese sitting around. I mean, Sanofsky's gone. Come back in. He's got a new job. He used to be the president of Windows Phone, and he headed things like the Kin, and he was working with Barnes & Noble.
Don't hold that against
This is
him.
just his resume. I'm not making up any of this stuff. He helped he's trying to bring a Reader app to Windows 8, and now he's the VP in charge of corporate strategy and development. He's going to be reporting to the CFO, Peter Klein, instead of talking to Steve Ballmer directly. His job in the past months, as Sarah mentioned, this was his title. His job was a time-critical opportunity focused on driving maximum impact in 2012 with Windows Phone and Windows 8. That is the actual job description. So I guess he's done with that, and now he's ready to do corporate strategy.
The critical time has passed.
Critical time is over. Maybe the deal is done, whatever he was working on. But in light of Steven Sanofsky leaving, Does this move look like it's reactionary, or does this point to a power struggle in Microsoft? What do you think, Stephen?
I think we got a chance for somebody to smooth over the wrinkles, to build some ties across different product divisions, which was the problem that everybody was complaining was happening in the Sinofsky era. He could make the trains run on time in the Windows division, but at the expense of actually cooperating with any of the other parts of Microsoft. And the other parts of Microsoft are actually important. So, you know, you get a new person head of development and strategy. That signals to me that you got somebody whose job it is to pull the pieces together and make something more cohesive out of Microsoft than a bunch of independent squabbling fiefdoms.
I wonder what this time critical thing was that Lease was working on, and what the real reason was that he was shuffled aside. It's easy to jump to the conclusion that it had to do with Sinofsky, but as we mentioned, he was also the guy in charge of the kin, and so that may have been as much of a reason to be like, you know what, Andy, let's move you out of the way for a while.
Sit the next couple plays out.
Well, the kin was pretty much destroyed by Sinofsky. That's the point, because these little divisions that Microsoft had, they were supposed to move forward. They wanted to change. They wanted to run a mobile operating system on something different, and then Sinofsky didn't want that. That's why the kin got just hamstrung entirely. It was supposed to be a feature phone. All the deals fell apart. And so Lee's being in charge of that, I don't know if it's necessarily awful, but it's Sinofsky was in the way of that. So now that he's gone, I'm kind of curious if Lee's is going to have enough power to do anything in Microsoft as the VP of corporate strategy. What does that even mean? Is he going to actually say maybe Windows isn't the way to go? Are they going to move towards something else?
No, he's not going to say that. I mean, he reports to the CFO, which is interesting. It sounds like he was being sheltered by Steve Ballmer by reporting directly to Ballmer, and now they're putting him back in a biz dev situation. He's not in charge of a particular product, so it may be easy to make too much of it out of this because of the timing of it. Maybe Sinofsky was the one who's like, don't you put him anywhere else. You leave him out there. And now was finally the first time they had a chance to move him into something more productive. Let's take a break and thank our other sponsor for today's show. This episode of Tech News Today brought to you by Ford, featuring Sync's versatile entertainment features such as browsing. Browse your music collection by genre, album, artist, playlist, song title, all using voice commands. You keep your eyes on the road, your hands on the wheel. Sync allows voice-activated control of your media player. It'll even play a list of music you're in the mood for with the Play Similar Music voice command. Voice control music no matter how it's stored. On your smartphone, you can get it by Bluetooth or USB driver MP3 player plugged right in. And iTunes tagging. You don't have to worry about remembering the name of the great song you just heard. Available sync with My Ford Touch and HD radio technology with iTunes tagging. Lets you tag a song you like, transfer that info to your iPad, and then when you're safely off the road, you can purchase that song directly from iTunes at a later time. Best of all, Ford offers sync on every 2012, 2013 Ford vehicle sold in the United States of America, including the 2012 Ford Focus. If you like the idea of talking to your car and telling it what you to do and driving with your eyes forward instead of weaving all over the road like the people I saw this morning on my way in, you can learn more about this and other technologies that Ford is bringing to its vehicles at Ford.com/technology. And we thank Ford for their support of Tech News Today. Got a lot of rumor. Well, Reuters really spurred a lot of discussion about AMD hiring JP Morgan and Chase. And then AMD came right back and said, nope.
See, this is weird because I saw this story developing yesterday. I was home. I was reading this. I'm like, this is exciting. I can't believe AMD might be up for sale. In the same article where Reuters actually explains that AMD is looking to, they hired JP Morgan Chase to explore options. In the same article, the third paragraph includes that statement from AMD saying AMD is not actively pursuing a sale. So it's not like Reuters said, hey, we have an exclusive, and then AMD.
Are you sure they didn't
something.
add the response later?
I am pretty sure.
Okay.
That's the way it went down yesterday. So there's no update or anything in the headlines that Reuters normally does, or is it updated at a certain time. So I was kind of surprised by that. But anyway, back to the actual story. Reuters saying AMD hired a bank, basically saying they could sell themselves. Priority is not a sale of the company. They could be selling patents because everybody loves patents these days. Why not get some from AMD? There's a whole bunch of analysts saying that there are a bunch of companies that should buy this. Microsoft, Google, Samsung, Intel, even Facebook. These should be the suitors to AMD.
Sure, why don't I buy it?
Don't forget, AMD also has some design wins with game consoles, so they're not like dead just yet. If the rumor was true, what company should buy AMD, Tom? Should it be you? Should you buy AMD?
No, I'm not going to buy AMD. No, I don't know who would benefit from buying AMD unless it was Intel, which I don't think they would allow. I think that would be too much market consolidation. There might be some smaller design firms out there that could benefit by buying AMD, but I don't think they could afford it because AMD, as you mentioned, isn't dead yet. Stephen, I know you follow chips really closely. What do you think the future is here? Or is this just a bunch of smoke?
My guess is there is smoke, and then there's also some fire behind the smoke. AMD's kind of a basket case, has been for a little while. They had some glory days in the last decade where they caught Intel flat-footed in the transition to 64-bit processors. So AMD's Opteron and Athlon chips did really well there for a while. They could command something of a price premium, or at least compete more effectively with Intel. And then they fell off the map again, and they're back to their same old game of chasing Intel, trying to keep a foothold in low-end, low-margin PCs. That's just a really sucky business to be in the best of times. Right now, the PC market is struggling. Lots of people's disposable incomes going to smartphones or to tablets, and of course the economy is kind of a drag. So, being so wedded to the PC market, it's pretty tough for AMD right now. So yeah, I would be surprised if they were not exploring some kind of strategic options. There's usually some kind of wiggle room in the official corporate statements about what they are or are not pursuing. It could be milder than how it came out initially with Reuters that exploring something up to and including a sale of the business, but. I wouldn't be surprised if it happened to me if, they're a private equity kind of deal, or, maybe some other aspirational chip maker like Broadcom or something wants to make a bolder play, expand into some new markets. I could see something like that happening. I don't think Intel is likely to be a buyer. I think obviously the antitrust issues are one big stumbling block, but the other is, what does AMD have that Intel really needs? What Intel really needs right now is a really strong mobile processor strategy, and AMD is not going to help Intel fix that really, despite the fact that AMD is trying to get into the ARM processor business and not, expanding away just from its x86 business. So I don't know. I don't see any easy exit strategies for the company at all.
What do you think, Sarah? You think Apple will just buy them, just go, look, we're not using Intel. We got to make our own chips every which way. We'll have AMD in here. We'll have our PA semiconductor stuff there. We're all set.
No, I think it makes more sense for Apple to go the way of, I think it was a rumor earlier in the week, or maybe it was last week, wanted to try to figure out how to get lower power consumption and higher power efficiency with ARM chips across their entire brand. And again, yeah, it's probably a couple years out, but I don't really see where buying AMD gets them much further than not continuing to have a relationship with Intel. I mean, it might be more cost effective, but it doesn't really solve the problem.
I can see the AMD being sold off for parts, though. Their patents are probably pretty valuable in just any chip manufacturing process. So if it's ARM or not, they could figure out, okay, I can use this process for something else, or they'll just continue to. I mean, they also have that graphics department. I mean, they know what they're doing with that. So there's some value to it still. So I don't think that this statement that AMD made is necessarily 100% true. Like, oh yeah, we're not actively seeking anything. Like you said, Tom. So
yeah, nothing seems terribly probable. Probably what Stephen said about Broadcom is the best chance, but even that doesn't seem like it's oh yeah, that's an obvious move that would happen. So AMD may really, for once, be looking at strategic options and not using that as a euphemism.
Here's an interesting idea. So a few years ago when AMD bought ATI, there was all this hue and cry raised because it's an expensive acquisition, and what are they going to really get out of having a graphics chip company in the stable? Well, if you look at the way computers work today, GPUs, the graphics chips, handle more and more and more of the processing load. And if you look at where NVIDIA has actually got a bit of a foothold in the mobile industry, in smartphones and in tablets, part of the reason is because it's got respectable graphics performance that, it sandwiches together there with the ARM cores. So, I could see potentially a lot of people interested in AMD's ATI assets, the graphics assets. I think that's probably pretty valuable. And I'm not sure exactly what the specifics are of the x86 licensing deal, but, I have to imagine that there's, some significant value there too. Even though the PC market's kind of down in the dumps, there's still millions of these things that sell. x86 chips are, nothing to sneeze at. The installed base of software on there is gargantuan. ARM is challenging x86 chips for sure, but for example, I don't think it's very likely that Apple is going to move its personal computers over to ARM anytime in the next couple of years. I just think the processing power is just way too anemic to, for Apple to put its brand on something like that for a laptop. Even with the new higher powered A15 cores from ARM, I still just don't see it as too likely for a good while. But the graphics assets from AMD, that's worth something. The x86 assets, that's worth something. I'm not going to predict the future, but given the troubles AMD's been having in the last years, I wouldn't be surprised if something dramatic did happen with the company.
You know what else is worth something? Facebook stock. It's actually worth a little more than it was yesterday.
Yeah, and this is a big day for Facebook because the largest lockout expiration is now over. So that means 773 million shares that were under lockdown for employees and investors are now available to sell off. They strategically scatter these, and this is the biggest of the bunch. I think there's one more in December and another one in February. But this was the sort of lockout that investors said beforehand, okay, this is, the stock always dips at this point. This is something to expect. Facebook stock was up today. It was up to 21.91, which is a little bit over a 10% gain. But in monetary terms, that's about a $5 billion market capitalization gain. So when you're talking about all these shares together, that's quite a bit of money. And a big reason for that is that the number of shares that are being borrowed, which is sort of a nice name for short selling of stocks, has dropped quite a bit, almost 40% this month. When investors short sell, what they do is they borrow shares, then they sell them off. They hope the stock will dip. Then they buy them back. They make a little profit, and then they give back the shares that they borrowed. So it's a pretty common practice to make a quick buck. And it looks like investors aren't really doing that this time around, or certainly not in the sorts of numbers that were expected. So it means one of a couple of things, or a combination of both. First, investors say stock has bottomed out. I mean, it's pretty much at its lowest point. We're not going to get any quick money from this.
We're not going to bet on it going down anymore.
Exactly, which is, you don't want a stock to be on a bottom, but you do like the idea that the stock isn't going to keep falling. Or number two, investors just say, hey, we don't want to sell. We're happy. We'd feel good about it, short sell or not. This is looking good, and we're not going to get rid of our shares. Of course, Mark Zuckerberg has 504 million shares. He has said publicly, I'm not going to sell them. The majority of those are stock. Some of them are stock options. It's interesting. Mark Cuban has actually been extremely vocal about how Facebook is going these days. By the way, did we mention yesterday that Facebook hired Zynga's CFO, David Wenner, as VP of Corporate Finance and Business Planning?
Oops. Zynga, you lost one.
Zynga lost one. Back to Facebook. Well, at least Facebook hasn't just completely shut the door on relationships with Zynga. They know that there are a lot of interesting people there. That might have something to do with investors feeling a little bit better about the future. But back to Mark Cuban, he goes, I don't like what Facebook's doing, especially with brands. The way that they've changed their internal algorithm for what shows up in a user's newsfeed if they have liked one of my brand pages. We've talked recently about how brands have noticed, gosh, we're getting a much lower click-through rate. Facebook says it's not personal. It's just we're trying to not annoy the users as much as they could have been before.
Unless you pay us.
Unless you pay us.
Then you can annoy the users all you want.
Exactly. And he had tweeted recently, there was a specific example of he had taken a screen grab and tweeted that there was a certain story that the Mavericks page could have paid something like $3,000 to promote. And he was like, no, this is just ridiculous. I mean, you have people who have liked your page.
It's ridiculous that Cubans complained about $3,000. That's pocket change for him. But the principle remains.
It's definitely a principle. And this is not something that's unique to him. So he's, I guess, effectively speaking for many people who are running brands on Facebook. But he says, the big negative for Facebook is that we'll no longer push for likes or subscribers because we can't reach them all. Why would we invest in extending our Facebook audience size if we have to pay to reach them? That's crazy. He also says, you know what, we'll look at Tumblr, we'll look at the new MySpace. He said that looks interesting. Instagram, Twitter, those are the sorts of places that are very attractive to brands because you're still controlling your experience. He says the right price, charge an upfront fee for brands. Okay, okay. I'm running the Mavericks brand, and there are a variety of brands in his investment portfolio. I think he's got like 70 brands or something, that he's got a hand in. If you in the current system, there's a complete uncertainty on the cost. At least for our size brands, you have to deal with the pricing for each posting. That's a time waster. No one wants to do that. Wired has a story up today who says, this guy's crazy. Wired says, if you go to the Mavericks page, there's a bunch of advertisements for restaurants and Albertsons and just kind of like specials, and there's a lot less actual information about when the game is next or something about a particular player that you might really like, which is probably why somebody liked your page in the first place. Wired says you just want to blast your ads into all of your followers' news feeds for free, even though Facebook software, if it's doing its job, is going to show me less information if it deems that I am not interested.
Matthew Ingram at Paid Content, I just read this, says, what else did you think Facebook was going to do when it gave you a giant social platform for nothing?
Right.
They're going to try to charge you.
Sure.
Yeah. So Cuban wants to make all this money you're talking about off the page, but he doesn't want to pay Facebook any part of it.
Well, and he's saying, listen, a like is a like, right?
Yeah.
It should be,
Yeah,
but it isn't.
Yeah.
But the thing is that Facebook is noisy. We all feel that. And depending on how many brands you like, Facebook could be really noisy. If you are not engaging with a certain brand, you don't necessarily want that to be in your face all the time. Facebook's just trying to bug you a little bit less, or to basically leave the burden on me as a user to start screwing around with all of the settings of all the brands that I might follow to make sure that I don't get too much from one or the other.
Facebook charging money for functions, that doesn't sound crazy at all. And the fact is, Mark Cuban probably pays more for dry cleaning than this $3,000 bill, this thing here. And I mean, like you were saying, Sarah, you need an engaged audience. If you're going to see these ads in the first place, you might as well actually care about it. And the thing is, this barrier to entry stops Facebook users from getting spammed from like the lowest of the low. So if somebody's gaming Facebook, has millions of likes, and you're like, why is this showing up in my newsfeed? That shouldn't happen with this kind of this kind of structure. If the fact that somebody's got to put up money, this guy runs a professional sports organization. This is not some like mom and pop shop, he's running like a bakery or something. He's used to spending millions and millions of dollars just to get a message out there.
Yeah, but the principle should remain the same, right?
The principle
whether he runs a bakery or a sports
using somebody else's network to get a message out there for free. Like if you're really good at what you do, you'll be paying your social networking like engineers. Like, okay, what do we do to get people engaged? Either you're going to pay Facebook directly, or you're going to be paying a team to figure out how are people going to like our things without us paying Facebook. So you're going to pay one way or the other.
Shank, do you agree? Is it a bait and switch, or is it just business?
I think it's just business. What it reminds me of a lot is Google and search engine optimization versus, people saying, 2006, I used to be on page 1 of Google search for patio furniture, and now I'm on page 30. Google is evil. And it's because Google is trying to, filter out the dreck and show what's relevant and good and what people are interested in. The big difference here is that Facebook, people actually go to the trouble of liking a particular brand page, and that expresses a certain interest, but it still smells a lot to me like a, commercial marketing kind of a transaction. I mean, I don't know how many Facebook friends, a couple hundred or something, too many for me to keep track of all of them. So the vast majority of them, they say something, I don't even notice. The river flows by. Even if I sat there all day and did nothing but Facebook, I'd still probably miss stuff, right? And, I think Facebook, the company, is just trying to better manage the signal to noise ratio that its users see so they don't get ticked off. And I think it's kind of a raw deal for the brand pages, and the pay-to-play ethos can kind of raise hackles if you're in a situation where somebody has actually gone to the trouble to like your brand page. But I think Facebook has a point here.
In the end, I do agree with Cuban, who says, I don't like the way they're doing stuff anymore, so I'm going to go somewhere else. That's the way it should be. If you don't like the way a service is working, go somewhere else. So it's a rational reaction, even if there may be a lot of rhetoric surrounding it.
I mean, that's the beauty of it, right, is that the whole pay to get this post definitely seen by more people than it's going to see is elective.
Yeah, you don't have to do it.
You
are
not forced into some sort of contract here. Go to Tumblr, the new MySpace. Let me know how it is.
Finally, Skype password reset vulnerability. Just want to do a quick explainer of what's going on in case you're confused or worried about it. This has been around for 2 months, apparently. At least it's been discussed for a couple months on a Russian forum. You go to Skype. If you know, let's say I know Iyaz's email address, the email address he's associated with Skype. I put in that email address. It says, hey, wait a minute. That email address already has an account. But here's the first problem. It lets you create an account anyway with that email address. Then, using that newly created user ID, you can do a password reset. And here's the other problem. Skype delivers you a password reset in the client. You don't have to get it in your email. And then you can obtain a new password, reset the token sent by Skype itself, and now you have access to that other person's account through that password reset. The only way to protect yourself from this vulnerability would be to use an unknown email address that nobody knows that you have. Skype has temporarily disabled the password reset, as we mentioned. The Next Web told them about this vulnerability before they published the story about it, and we're still waiting at this point for Microsoft, who owns Skype, to report on what they've done. Getting rid of password resets fixes the problem for now, but that's not a long-term solution because you need to be able to have password resets. Does this scare you, Shank, or is this something you think they'll fix pretty quick?
Actually, I think they have fixed it.
Good.
Since the first report came out. So they had a temporary workaround, some sort of mitigation measure, and now they say they've closed the hole. So that's good news. Obviously, this is an extremely embarrassing vulnerability. So it's good they fixed it quickly. This is just, according to the Next Web's reports, it was pretty easy to exploit. They did it twice in 10 minutes. So Microsoft had to move very fast to fix this. I do wonder how many of these holes are just lying around on the internet, waiting to be discovered by somebody who can figure out that there's a vulnerability somewhere. There are just so many different ways you can attack things. One thing I think that's part of the problem is authentication is hard from a software point of view and security point of view, and it's extraordinarily inconvenient for the user. So it's this really ugly situation where security is in tension with convenience, and I really don't see any easy ways around it. I use the Google two-factor authentication. I'm glad I do. I've used it for a long time now, but it's a hassle. I'm getting, I have to pull out authentication codes and run Google Authenticator app all the time, and it's an extra hassle. For me, it's worth it, but I don't see any easy fixes to the fundamental problem, which is we have way too many passwords. We have way too many usernames. It's too easy to just get in the habit of recycling them from one site to another. It's too easy to forget it if you have some more complicated system. It's just an intractable problem. And the fundamental issue is that there are just so many services on the internet that require authentication that, they're just inevitably going to be any number more of these problems, I fear.
Thanks for pointing that out, Stephen. Skype blog says that they are reaching out to a small number of users who may have been impacted to assist as necessary, but the password resets process today is now working properly. So hopefully that's the end of that. Let's take a break and thank our sponsor, Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website or blog. The new Squarespace.com is faster and easier than ever. I used it to make a book website for myself and was blown away just by how nice it is. You can look at the blog the way other people see it, and then you click a button, and then you get all these little edit things that are nicely laid out over the top, and you can click on a little pencil, and you can go in and change some things, and then save it, and then you go right back to what you see when you come to the page. Still focused on ease of use, beautiful design. They have even better templates than they've ever had before, and it's an entirely new product built on HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript, and JSON for speed and flexibility, and the best mobile experience. They devised some new templates that actually scale. So if somebody's looking at it on a little 3-inch screen or somebody's looking at it on a big 35-inch screen, it doesn't matter. The images scale. Any image you upload, they make several versions of it. The templates scale. So you will have the best experience no matter what device somebody is looking at your website on. Better social media integration, better design. It's all there. 50 new and improved features. Go try it out for yourself. Sign up for a free account. There's no credit card needed. Just start building your website right now at squarespace.com. And if you decide to keep it, use this offer code TNT11 and get 10% off your first purchase on new Squarespace accounts. That's TNT11, includes monthly and annual plans. So don't forget, if you sign up for an annual plan, you get a free domain name with annual plan subscriptions. That's squarespace.com. Use offer code TNT11. We thank them for their support of Tech News Today. On to the calendar. Not much on the calendar.
There's not much on the calendar, but it is the Facebook gift event. That was the one that had to be rescheduled due to Superstorm Sandy, and it is rescheduled to tomorrow, November 15th. We still don't exactly know what it's about because Facebook Gifts is a feature that's already been rolled out.
I have pronounced GIFs. No.
Heafts.
Sorry.
Facebook Heafts.
The gift interchange format, it's a recursive.
You just, yeah. So that's tomorrow, and nothing else is happening of note.
Let's see what's incoming.
Incoming message.
First email from Jared. He's talking about the Yahoo Mail redesign. Regarding Yahoo Mail trying to be like Gmail, this may be good. However, one of the biggest problems Yahoo faces that Google has licked is spam. Google's pretty good at dealing with spam messages. Most of mine go to a spam folder, while 2 or 3 slip into my inbox. One bad thing about Gmail is you may have multiple folders/labels, but only one actual message ever. So I constantly have to check to think before deleting a message from sent items or airmail folder, knowing that it'll be deleted from all folders. With Yahoo or other services, your mail is safe if deleted from one folder. However, Yahoo needs to do a spring cleaning in spam before they start improving the GUI or anything else. This is a top priority, and locking down their system with 2-factor authentication would be great.
Yeah, 2-factor would be great. I never see the big spam problems that other people report, but I definitely have seen that people have them, so they exist. I think it's an intermittent issue. Stephan writes in, while the caller mentioned that the rewards programs could be better utilized if you could program them with Google Wallet, the idea of how these programs works is wrong. The reason these programs exist is because the merchant accepting the card is actually paying more to accept the card. In the background, rewards cards go through a higher interchange rate than a standard credit card. On top of that, most processing ISOs set up their merchants so that rewards cards fall in some of the most expensive rate categories, making more money for the ISO. They do this because they can. Now, that may sound dismissive, but that's the reality of the credit card processing world. Unless you're with the extreme minority of honest ISOs, you are being screwed on your rates. Thanks for the insight, Stephan. Appreciate the email. And that's it for this episode of Tech News Today. Stephan Shankland, thank you, my friend, for joining us. Let folks know anything you might want to talk about that you're working on, where they can find your work, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, sure. I'm a reporter for CNET News. Just go to news.com, and you'll see my work there. Got a big piece on Google antitrust coming out in the pipeline maybe tomorrow if we get lucky.
Google antitrust stuff is complicated. That must have been intricate to work on.
Oh my God! Yeah, I interviewed 24 people for it, and it's a monster of a story. So we have to beat it back into submission before we inflict it on the readers.
Awesome! I can't wait to read that. Thanks everybody for submitting stories at our subreddit technewstoday.reddit.com. You can find us on the web at twit.tv/TNT. You can email us. Our email address is tnt@twit.tv. Give us a call. Leave us a voicemail 260-TNT show. And of course, find us live in the mornings at 10 a.m. Pacific every day of the week at live.twit.tv. Dan Patterson joins us tomorrow. We'll see you then.